On her third night of marriage, she heard her husband whisper another woman's name. A week later, she found a locked drawer. Inside, a second phone, a hidden photograph, and a deleted chat that revealed everything.
On the morning of her wedding, Amina woke up to the sound of women laughing in the courtyard and pots clanging in the kitchen. The whole compound was alive with celebration. Her aunties were singing old marriage songs. The decorators were still hanging the last strips of gold fabric. The scent of perfume, flowers, and spicy rice drifted through the air. Everyone said she looked radiant. Everyone said she was lucky. Everyone said Elijah was a good man. And for a while, Amina believed it too. She sat in front of the mirror while her cousin Nadia adjusted the veil on her head. "There," Nadia said softly. "Now you really look like a queen." Amina smiled at her reflection. "Thank you." Nadia stood behind her with a calm face, but something in her eyes felt unreadable. Amina dismissed it. Nadia had always been hard to read. Even as children, she had the strange gift of smiling without revealing what she was truly thinking. The two girls had grown up in the same house after Amina's mother died. Their grandmother had raised them almost like twins. Amina was gentle, quiet, and trusting. Nadia was clever, beautiful, and sharp. People used to joke that Amina had a soft heart and Nadia had a strong mind. As they grew older, that difference only widened. But no matter what changed, Amina still believed one thing: Nadia would never hurt her. That morning, Nadia hugged her and whispered, "Today your life begins." Amina held her hand. "You will always be part of it." For a split second, Nadia's smile froze. Then she pulled away and said, "Of course." At the time, Amina did not understand why those words sounded heavy. Later, she would remember them and wish she had listened more carefully. The man everyone trusted. Elijah had entered Amina's life like a man sent to answer old prayers. He was polite, well-spoken, patient, and calm. He worked in real estate, dressed neatly, and carried himself like someone who knew how to protect a home. When he came to ask for Amina's hand, he brought gifts for the elders, greeted everyone properly, and spoke about the future with confidence. He said he wanted peace, loyalty, and a wife who respected family. To a girl like Amina, who had spent most of her life watching women survive disappointment, Elijah seemed rare. He never raised his voice during courtship. He never pressured her. He never looked careless with money or words. Even their grandmother, who distrusted most men, said, "This one has discipline." That blessing meant everything. What Amina did not know was that Elijah had first met Nadia long before he officially met her. It had happened 8 months earlier at a cousin's engagement party. Nadia had arrived late in a red dress that turned heads. Elijah had spoken to her first, not Amina. They had shared jokes near the drinks table while everyone danced around them. Later that night, Nadia had told Amina almost casually, "That man kept asking about your family." Amina laughed it off at the time. She never asked what exactly he wanted to know. She never asked why Nadia seemed amused. And she never imagined that before Elijah became her husband, he and Nadia had already built a private understanding. Not a loud affair. Not something obvious. Something quieter. Something more dangerous. A secret. Strange things after the wedding. The first crack in the marriage appeared so small that Amina nearly ignored it. 2 days after the wedding, Elijah left his phone on the dining table while he went outside to answer a knock at the gate. The screen lit up for 1 second. A message came in. It only said 3 words. Did she sign? Amina frowned. Before she could think, the phone went dark again. When Elijah returned, she asked lightly, "Who is asking if I signed something?" For the first time since their wedding, his face changed. Just for a moment. Then he gave a short laugh. "Work matter, one of my clients." Amina nodded, but the answer stayed in her mind. Sign what? She had not signed anything. That same evening, Nadia came to visit carrying fruit and a bright smile. She walked into the house as if she had always belonged there. Even the maid seemed surprised by how freely she moved around. Elijah greeted her warmly. Too warmly. Not in a way a husband greets his wife's cousin out of politeness. It was the ease between them that bothered Amina. No hesitation, no awkwardness, no careful distance. They spoke like two people who already knew each other well. Nadia laughed at something Elijah said before he even finished the sentence. He handed her a glass without asking what she wanted. She sat comfortably in the armchair near his side of the room, not near Amina. Amina watched them and felt something she could not explain. Not jealousy, not yet. Just confusion. That night, when she mentioned it, Elijah brushed it aside. "You're overthinking. She's your cousin." Amina turned to face him. "I know, it's just, you seem very familiar." He smiled and touched her hand. "My wife is already suspicious after only 2 days?" She tried to smile back, but something inside her tightened. The locked drawer. A week passed, then another. And with every day, Amina noticed things that made less and less sense.
Elijah had become strangely interested in her late grandmother's properties.
He asked questions Amina had never heard him ask before. Did your grandmother leave any documents? Who manages the old family land? Did she write a will? At first, Amina assumed he was being practical. Maybe he was trying to help her settle inheritance matters after the marriage. But the questions came too often, and always with a subtle urgency. One afternoon, while Elijah was bathing, Amina entered their room to put away laundry. She noticed that the bottom drawer of his desk was locked. That drawer had never been locked before. Amina stood still for a moment. She had never searched through a man's things in her life. She believed trust was the foundation of peace. But suspicion had already started growing, and it was growing fast. She pulled lightly on the drawer. Locked. She heard the bathroom tap still running. Her heart pounded. In the wardrobe, she found the spare key holder that came with the house. One key did not belong to any visible door. Her hands shook as she tried it. The drawer opened. Inside were 3 things: a brown envelope, a second mobile phone, and a photograph. Amina picked up the photograph first. It was old, slightly bent at the corners. In it, Elijah was standing beside Nadia at what looked like a hotel garden. They were not touching, but they stood close enough to suggest familiarity. Too close for strangers, too relaxed for a chance meeting. Amina's throat went dry. She grabbed the second phone and pressed the power button. It turned on. No password. A flood of messages opened across the screen. Most were deleted, but not all. And every surviving message was from Nadia. Amina felt the room spinning around her as she began to read. She trusts you completely. Do not rush her. If she becomes suspicious, everything will be spoiled. Once the transfer is done, we can decide the next step. You should have married me from the start, but maybe this way is better. Amina stopped breathing. Her fingers trembled so badly that the phone nearly slipped from her hand. She kept reading. Remember, the land is tied to her marriage status. After that, she has no use. Amina dropped into the chair behind her. The bathroom tap stopped running. She quickly switched off the phone, shoved everything back into the drawer, locked it, and returned the key. By the time Elijah walked out, wrapped in a towel, Amina was folding clothes with stiff hands and a dead face. He smiled. "You look tired." She lifted her eyes to him. For the first time, she looked at her husband and saw a stranger. A marriage built on a plan. That night, Amina did not confront him. She wanted to. Every part of her wanted to scream, cry, throw the truth in his face, and demand an explanation. But something deeper told her not to. If she confronted him too soon, he would lie. And if Nadia was truly involved, then Amina was not just dealing with a cheating husband. She was dealing with a plan. A plan that had started before the wedding. A plan she did not yet fully understand. So she waited. And the next morning, she called the only person she believed might tell her the truth. Their grandmother's former lawyer, Mr. A's. The old man was surprised to hear from her, but agreed to meet. They met in his office near the market, where old files lined the walls and the air smelled faintly of paper and dust. Amina spoke carefully. "Sir, I want to ask about my grandmother's land." Mr. Eze removed his glasses and studied her face. "Why now?" "Because my husband keeps asking about it." The lawyer leaned back in his chair and was silent for a long time. Then he said, "Your grandmother left instructions. The riverside land was placed under a protective clause. It could only be transferred to you after your marriage, and only if you personally signed in the presence of legal witnesses. She was afraid someone might try to take advantage of you if you remained unmarried and isolated." Amina felt cold. "Does anyone else know this?" Mr. Eze hesitated. Then he answered, "Your cousin Nadia was present once when your grandmother mentioned it. I cannot say how much she understood." Amina's hands clenched in her lap. "And if I refuse to transfer it?" "Then it remains under your sole name." That was all she needed to hear. Everything suddenly began fitting together. Elijah had not married her for love. He had married her for access. And Nadia had known. Perhaps from the beginning. Perhaps before Elijah ever smiled at Amina. When Amina returned home, Nadia was already there. She was sitting in the living room, legs crossed, drinking juice as though the house belonged to her. Elijah sat opposite her. Their conversation ended the moment Amina stepped inside. 3 pairs of eyes would not have made Amina feel lonelier than those two did in that silence. "You're back," Elijah said. "Yes," Amina replied calmly. Nadia smiled. "I came to check on you." "How kind." Nadia's smile flickered for 1 second. "Are you all right?" Amina set her handbag down slowly. "Why wouldn't I be?" "No reason." Amina looked directly into her cousin's eyes and saw something she had never allowed herself to see before. Not guilt, not fear. Calculation. This was no mistake, no emotional accident, no sudden temptation. This was deliberate. Nadia stood up and adjusted her dress. "I should leave." "Stay," Amina said. Both of them looked at her. Amina forced a soft smile. "We barely spend time together anymore.
I would hate for marriage to come between family." That evening, she watched them the way a patient hunter studies movement in tall grass.
She noticed how Elijah avoided looking at Nadia too long whenever Amina was near. She noticed how Nadia stopped herself before using private jokes. She noticed how both of them became more careful than natural people ever needed to be. And most of all, she noticed the fear beneath their caution. They were afraid of one thing. That she knew. But they were not sure. So now all three of them were acting. Only one of them, however, was acting for survival. The other two were acting to protect a lie. The lie gets bigger. Over the next few days, Amina played the role of the loving wife perfectly. She cooked, she smiled, she allowed Elijah to speak about the future. She even acted interested when he brought up the family land again. "I think we should make smart decisions," he told her one evening. "Land can be developed. We could build rental units. It would secure our future." Amina lowered her eyes and pretended to consider it. "Maybe, but I do not understand such things." "I can help you." Of course he could. That was the whole point. Meanwhile, Nadia grew bolder. She began visiting more often, always with an excuse. One day she came with fabric samples. Another day she came with food. Another day she said she only wanted to see if Amina needed company. Once, while Amina was standing in the kitchen, she heard them talking quietly in the corridor. Nadia's voice was tight. "You're taking too long." Elijah whispered, "She is not as easy as you said." Nadia answered, "Then make her trust you more." Amina stood behind the wall, one hand covering her mouth. That night she cried in silence, not because her husband had betrayed her, but because the deeper wound came from elsewhere. Nadia knew the way Amina loved. She knew the way Amina trusted. She knew every weakness in her heart because she had grown up beside it. And she had used that knowledge to destroy her. That was the betrayal Amina did not know how to survive, what started it all. 3 days later, Amina found it in a voice note. Elijah had stepped out in a hurry, leaving the second phone in the car. Amina had secretly taken it earlier and hidden it inside an old wrapper cloth in her trunk. That afternoon, while replaying old messages, she discovered an audio file that had not been deleted. She pressed play. Nadia's voice filled the room. Clear, cold, familiar. "Elijah, listen to me. If you marry me, they will suspect something. But if you marry Amina, nobody will question it. Grandma wants her settled before releasing the land anyway. Once the papers are done, she will be too emotional to fight. She always forgives. That is who she is." Then Elijah's voice. "And after?" Nadia laughed softly. "After? We take what we need and leave her with the marriage. Or let the marriage break on its own. She is stronger than she looks. She will survive." Then Elijah said something that tore through Amina like a blade. "You know I wanted you first." Nadia replied, almost fondly, "Then prove it by finishing this properly." Amina stopped the audio. For a long time she could not move. So this was the truth. Elijah had wanted Nadia. Nadia had wanted the land. And Amina had been the bridge between greed and desire. Not a wife, not a partner. A bridge. A tool. A sacrifice. That evening, as the sunset dimmed the sky outside, something hardened inside Amina. She was done crying. Done waiting. Done praying that the truth would become smaller. Now she wanted exposure. Not revenge driven by anger, justice driven by clarity. And she knew exactly how she would get it. The family gathering. Every year, Amina's family held a post-wedding Thanksgiving dinner whenever a new bride entered the household. It was supposed to be a beautiful thing, an evening of blessing, speeches, laughter, and family unity. This time, Amina decided it would become something else. It would become a stage. She told Elijah she wanted the event at their house so everyone could celebrate the marriage properly. He agreed immediately, relieved to see her apparently happy again. Nadia looked almost triumphant when she heard the plan. Amina invited everyone: aunties, uncles, elders, neighbors close to the family. Even Mr. Eze, the lawyer. When Elijah asked why the lawyer needed to come to a family dinner, Amina smiled and said, "I thought it would be good to discuss the land blessings in front of the elders." Elijah's eyes lit up. He thought he had won. Nadia called later that night, and, not knowing Amina was near the open window, Elijah whispered to her outside. "She is ready." Nadia answered, "Good. Keep calm. Once the papers are discussed publicly, she won't refuse." Amina stepped away before he returned and lay on the bed as if half asleep. For the first time, Elijah kissed her forehead before sleeping. The cruelty of that small tenderness disgusted her more than any insult could have. The night of truth. The house was full by 7 in the evening. Plates moved in and out of the dining area. Children laughed in corners. Aunties praised the decorations. Men debated loudly about politics near the gate. Amina wore a simple green dress, elegant but calm. No heavy jewelry, no dramatic makeup. She wanted everyone focused on words, not appearance. Nadia arrived in gold. Elijah complimented her before he caught himself. Amina noticed. So did one of the aunties. That tiny mistake would matter later. When dinner ended and drinks were served, Uncle Paul tapped a spoon against his glass and asked the newlyweds to speak. Elijah stood first. He thanked the family for accepting him, praised Amina as a wonderful wife, and spoke about unity, growth, and building a strong future. He sounded sincere. He sounded noble. He sounded exactly like the kind of man lies often hide inside. Then Amina stood up. She smiled at the room. "Thank you all for coming. Marriage teaches a woman many things quickly. It teaches her who celebrates her. It teaches her who advises her. And sometimes, it teaches her who was waiting for her to fall." The room grew quieter. Elijah's smile faded slightly. Amina continued. "Before I got married, I believed betrayal only came from enemies. But I have learned that sometimes betrayal comes from the people who know your heart best." Nadia shifted in her seat. One uncle frowned. "Amina, what is this?" Amina took a breath. "Tonight, before any blessing is spoken over this marriage, I want the truth to be heard." Elijah stood quickly. "Amina, maybe this is not the right time." She turned to him. "No, it is the perfect time." Then she reached beneath the side table and brought out a small speaker. The room went silent. She pressed play. At first, all they heard was static. Then Nadia's voice filled the room. "Elijah, listen to me. If you marry me, they will suspect something. But if you marry Amina, nobody will question it." The air changed instantly. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed loudly. The rest of the recording played in full. Every word, every plan, every lie, every cold calculation. By the time it ended, Nadia's face had lost all color. Elijah looked as though the ground had opened beneath him. One aunt covered her mouth and whispered, "Jesus." Uncle Paul rose from his chair so sharply that it nearly fell over. "What is this?" Amina's voice was steady. "This is the man I married, and this is the cousin I called my sister." Nadia stood up. "This is not what it sounds like." Amina laughed once, softly. "Then what does it sound like, Nadia? Because to me, it sounds like the two of you planned my marriage around my grandmother's land." Elijah stepped forward. "Amina, let me explain." "No," she said firmly. "You have explained enough with your own voice." Mr. Eze, the lawyer, cleared his throat. "Since this matter has now become public, I believe I should speak." All eyes turned to him. He stood slowly and opened a file he had brought with him. "Your late grandmother anticipated coercion." She inserted an additional clause into the land transfer. "If any spouse is found to have entered the marriage for fraudulent access to the property, the land remains solely under Amina's name and cannot be sold or jointly managed for a period of 7 years. If emotional or financial manipulation is proven, any attempt to claim it becomes void." The room erupted. Voices rose, questions flew. Aunties began condemning Nadia. Uncles shouted at Elijah. Someone called him shameless. Someone else called Nadia wicked. Nadia tried to speak over them. "You are all acting like I forced him alone. He wanted me first." The room froze again. Elijah turned to her in disbelief. "Why would you say that now?" Nadia laughed bitterly. "Because it is true." And in that single moment, whatever false loyalty remained between them collapsed. Elijah shouted back, "You told me this would be simple." Nadia snapped. "Because she is simple." The slap came from Auntie Rose before anyone saw it coming. It landed across Nadia's face with a crack so sharp that even the children in the next room went quiet. "How dare you?" Auntie Rose cried. "That girl trusted you." Amina did not join the shouting. She did not cry. She simply stood there and watched the lie die in public. And for the first time since her wedding, she felt calm. The final blow. Elijah tried one last time. He came toward Amina with desperate eyes. "Please, I know what it looks like, but we can still fix this. I made mistakes. I was confused. Amina lifted a hand. "Do not insult me again by calling this confusion." He stopped. Her voice was quiet, but every person in the room heard it. "You did not make one mistake. You made a plan. You looked at my face, listened to my vows, ate food from my family, and still chose to marry me for benefit. That is not confusion. That is character." No one said a word. Amina continued. "And you, Nadia, you were not jealous of me because I was better than you. You were jealous because I had what you could not control. So instead of building your own life, you tried to steal mine." Nadia's eyes filled with angry tears. "You think you've won?" Amina looked at her calmly. "No, I think I woke up." Then she turned to the lawyer. "Please begin the process for legal separation and property protection." Elijah stared at her. "You would throw everything away?" Amina answered without hesitation. "There was never anything here to throw away." After the scandal. By the next week, the whole family knew the story. Not because Amina spread it, because lies always become louder when they are exposed. Some relatives begged her to settle it quietly. Others said she should forgive for the sake of dignity. But something had changed inside Amina. She was no longer interested in preserving appearances for people who had no interest in protecting her truth. Elijah moved out before the month ended. Nadia stopped visiting the family compound entirely. Rumors said the two of them blamed each other for everything. Rumors said they tried to continue seeing each other. Rumors said they fought over money that was never theirs to begin with. Amina did not care enough to confirm any of it. Her focus turned elsewhere. With the lawyer's help, she secured her grandmother's land and refused every offer to sell it. Instead, she used part of it to begin a small women's farming cooperative in honor of the grandmother who had seen danger before anyone else did. People were surprised by her decision. Why farming? Why not build rental units and make faster money? Amina's answer was simple. Because I want this land to feed women, not greedy men. Slowly, her pain turned into purpose. And slowly, purpose gave her back her dignity. 6 months later, Amina saw Nadia again. It happened at a funeral in another town. The day was hot, and everyone wore black. Voices stayed low. Dust clung to sandals. Mourning draped the gathering with heaviness. Nadia stood alone beneath a tree, thinner than before, her face still beautiful, but tired. When she saw Amina, she hesitated. For a moment it seemed she might walk away. Instead, she came closer. "I did not expect to see you," Nadia said. Amina nodded. "Neither did I." There was a long silence. Then Nadia said, "Do you hate me?" Amina looked at her carefully. Months earlier, she would have answered with tears. Now she answered with truth. "No, hate is too heavy. I carried enough because of you already." Nadia swallowed. "I was angry all my life. You were always loved without trying. People protected you, trusted you, chose you." Amina replied, "And because of that, you decided to become the knife." Nadia looked down. "I thought if I took something from you, I would finally feel equal." "And did you?" Nadia did not answer. She did not need to. Her silence said enough. Amina stepped back and adjusted her scarf. "One day you will understand something, Nadia. What destroyed you was not my happiness. It was your hunger." Then she turned and walked away. She did not wait for a response. Some endings do not need the other person's apology. Some endings only need your footsteps leaving. Amina's story became one of those family stories people tell in lowered voices when they want to warn young women about charming men and smiling relatives. But those who really understood it told it differently. They did not say she was the woman whose cousin betrayed her. They said she was the woman who discovered the truth before it buried her. They said she was the woman who stood in front of a room full of elders and chose dignity over fear. They said she was the woman who turned betrayal into a beginning. And maybe that was the real secret hidden inside her pain. Because sometimes the end of deception is the start of power. Sometimes the people who break your heart do not ruin your life. They reveal the strength you were forced to find. And sometimes the bride who is humiliated in public becomes the woman no one can ever deceive again. So if you ever find yourself surrounded by smiles that feel too polished, by kindness that asks too many questions, by love that seems strangely interested in what you own, pay attention. Not every hand that blesses you is clean. Not every person standing beside your happiness is praying for it. And not every marriage begins with love. Some begin with a secret. But in Amina's case, the secret did not survive. Because truth, no matter how long it hides, always waits for the right night to speak.
Subscribe for more videos. Turn on notifications.